Hey everyone, Gloria Masters from Handing the Shame Back. We have part two with the wonderful Brinn Langdale, all the way from California, and she is a therapist, speaker, and writer. Of course, she is. She's many more things as well, which we're going to hear about in this part two. But before we do that, there is a trigger warning. What is discussed is child sexual abuse focused. So don't continue. Go to the show notes below and you'll be directed for some resource and support. And also, you lucky people, I will have all of Brynn's links there for you to go and click on and follow her and sign up and support. Okay, part two. Welcome back to you, Brinn.
Thank you, Gloria. I'm excited to continue the journey with you.
So we left off, you know, what happened in your childhood and that the inner child is still leading the charge when in the presence of the abuser. And I think that's such a valuable point, actually. It gives permission for our survivors to feel, ah, there's not, it wasn't that anything was wrong with me, it was how I was trained really or conditioned. So Bryn, one final question on that part really is, do you think, or were you aware that your mother may have wondered what was going on during those, I think it was for 11 and a half years of abuse?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there is some evidence that when I was really young, like probably around the time it started, maybe even before, that my parents did have body safety kind of talk and tried to, I think they noticed some interest from my brother. But at the and then that's kind of all I know. I think there are some other aspects, there are some other thoughts that my mom could have known a little bit more, but that is not something that she admits to at all, and honestly something that I don't spend a lot of time on anymore. Um when I worked on forgiving my abuser, I worked on forgiving her as well for a lot of things.
Yes, not, and
Um,
it's not to have you feel at all uncomfortable.
yeah,
Please don't misunderstand. I was just wondering if
no,
he
it's a
had.
great question.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. What's your thinking now? You obviously left home, you went to university. Thank heavens for your older brother. We love him.
Yes.
So, and dad obviously instantly believed you. So I have to say we're a big fan of your dad too. They now have.
Yeah, and my mom 100% instantly believed me as
Yeah.
well.
Okay.
She was just also worried about her son who was withdrawing from heroin and not having anywhere to go. So what ended up happening is it felt like a choice. It felt like she chose him over me. And I think if she could do things differently now, she would. Um, and there's been a lot of healing in my family around that time because it was a very challenging time where our family just exploded. So, luckily there's been a lot of healing, and I'm really grateful for the parents that I have because it is something that we can openly talk about now,
Yeah.
and we've come to some resolution between our own selves. And I know a lot of survivors do not get that from their families, and it has taken a lot of work and energy and time, but I'm really happy to say that I have very loving relationships with my family members.
That's fantastic to hear.
Mm.
Um, it's amazing. So when you think about you as a young adult and moving forward through your adult life, what did you find yourself drawn to in terms of study or work or situations in your life?
Yeah, so when I went to college, it was like it was like a breath of fresh air. It was all I wanted. All I wanted was my independence. I had been relatively independent and I all I wanted was to be on my own. And so I really thrived in that way to get away from all the family dynamics and all of that. Um, I was the cat I started and founded a sports team and captained them all the way for 5 years. And I got a double major in college and I my last semester I had straight A's for the first time in my entire life.
Yeah.
So I had a steady boyfriend, I had friends, I traveled for my sport almost every weekend. But in the shadow of all of that, I was terribly emotional. I would have anger outbursts on a regular basis. I would get blackout drunk and get aggressive and inappropriate. I hated myself. There was this sense of just like self-loathing. I thought everybody hated me. It wreaked havoc in my relationships and it got to the point where my boyfriend of 4 years said to me, you know, if this doesn't change, we're gonna break up. And luckily, that was an intervention that got me to start moving towards my self help. And so at 22, I enrolled in an 8-day program where I learned so much about myself. I learned about my triggers, I learned about psychology, I learned about, you know, the different parts of ourselves, my inner child, my inner critic part of me, the part that beats me up all the time. I learned about more of this adult part, this like nurturing, compassionate side. I started to really embrace more of like my spirituality, which had always been there, but had kind of fallen off in some of my dark times. And so I just really started getting back to me. And when after college, I moved back to my hometown, but like a different section. And, you know, I started getting really into yoga. My oldest brother had a yoga studio. And, you know, so I got really into yoga and meditation and breath work and energy work. And I started kind of threw myself into this variety of like holistic and you know more modern psychology methods to try anything to help myself heal because it was so obvious from my romantic relationships that this was impacting me. You know, my codependency, my anxious attachment, like feeling having massive meltdowns, feeling so rejected, feeling like a burden, feeling not wanted. And you know, there were so many ways that the lens in which I viewed the world from my past experiences were really negatively impacting me. So for me, you know, it wasn't about like, oh, I want to go do this thing. It was, I need to work on myself.
Well, and it's interesting because what you're saying takes me back to what you said in part one, which was it feels like you were living a double life actually, because
Yep.
go figure, until you were able to face and start the healing, and survivors notice that about yourselves as well. Until you're ready to face in that to that, Bryn, you're doing that separation again, aren't you? You're hard out partying, drinking to excess, blackout drunk, as you say, and then by day, you know, captain of the team for 5 years in a row, and yeah, straight A's.
Yeah.
So yeah, can you? What do you think about that connection between the young adult you and the child you? What do you see about that?
Yeah, you know, that is really interesting. I don't know if I've ever kind of quite thought about it that way. I see myself as a very intense, passionate person. And so sometimes those qualities can be good used for good or evil, right? And so
Just
I think in
fabulous.
that way, yeah. I think in that way, you know, like now I can understand where my intense emotions come from. Now I can understand more about me and now I know more about me and I know why I do the things I do. And the more I got to know me, the more understanding, compassion, love I have for myself. And the more I have those things, the more I want to care for myself. It's kind of like, if you think about it, like, we really care for people when we know them, right? Like the stranger down the street, like sure, you want good things for them, but like you're not tripping over yourself to make them happy. But we really do that with people that we care about because we know them. We know their history, we know their background, we know their quirks. And so I think people oftentimes mistreat themselves because they don't know themselves. So it makes it really easy to not care. I don't care if I, take a shower. I don't care if my health, I don't care if my laundry's clean or what, these little examples that can actually mean a lot. So part of my healing has actually been really strengthening my adult nurturing self to be able to take care of my inner child. I kind of think of her as like taking care of like a daughter, like I want her to be fed well. I want her to move her body. I want her to feel connected to her friends and family. I want her, to have clean clothes and brush her teeth and good hygiene and, all these ways that if we don't care about ourselves, those slip by the wayside. And then that becomes a whole cycle in itself. Because we don't feel good about ourselves when we're not taking care of ourselves. So
Oh, yeah,
I
and
think a big,
that's hallmarks of depression as well. But
right.
the work that you're doing now, that's a nice segue actually, and to tell us about what you're doing now in this space, because I'm so excited to hear about it first of all, but I think it's going to be so valuable to know.
Yeah, so I do what I call the holistic approach. And when I say holistic, I spell holistic with a W, meaning the whole you. And it's really what it's about, is about getting to know the whole you. That's your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health, your brain health, your gut health, right? So like we look at the whole picture of why does it make absolute perfect sense that you are doing what you're doing right now? Because it all does. If you look back at everything you've experienced in your life, it all makes absolute perfect sense why you're in the position that you are right now. So then once we understand why you're doing the things you're doing, then we can move forward. Then we can have a more clear sense of where you want to go in the future. But it really takes, like, taking stock of like, where are you now, what is going on with you in this holistic way of really looking at the whole person. And once you do that, it all makes sense. And so you could do a ton of meditation retreats and you can do a ton of spiritual stuff, but do you have the hard skills of being able to communicate your feelings? Or you can sit in therapy for 30 years and totally psychoanalyze yourself and completely understand why you do the things you do, but your nervous system is still going to be dysregulated because of your triggers. So it's like we need these multi-layered approaches for healing because healing does take place on multiple levels. So, the physical body needs healing. Like, for example, our gut holds a lot of our serotonin and dopamine. So a lot of people don't know that. They don't know that, like, if they put a bunch of junk food in their body, they are actively destroying the chances of the serotonin and dopamine getting created. And so having a good gut health is directly correlated to your mental health. And then you're talking about brain health. Well, your actual physical brain is also so important to your mental health. So that's really what I'm passionate about. So there's kind of like healing on that way, and then emotionally what I talk about with holistic approach is those parts of ourselves. That inner child at all different ages, the inner teenager, she has a lot to say as well. Let me tell you.
No, no.
Yeah, exactly.
Hear that, team? We're going to hear. I want to hear. This is so valuable. Carry on.
Yeah, so we have our inner child of all different ages. We have this inner critic who, a lot of times when people hear the inner critic, it's like, oh, silence the inner critic, get away from the inner critic, don't listen to the inner critic. And my philosophy is everything we do is happening for a reason. This part is actually here to protect you. This part that wants you, that's telling you, oh, you're not good enough, or you're a burden, or, you need to try harder. It actually wants you to do those things so you will have connections, so you will achieve your goals, so you'll actually do the things you want to do in life. So it's about befriending that inner critic, making him your ally, making it your friend, learning how to soothe the inner child. But then we do that by really strengthening the adult. I hear so much about inner child work these days, but how can you soothe that child if you don't have a safe adult to help with that inner child? So we have to get our adult on board by starting to care for ourselves and feel good about ourselves a little bit. And then we can start soothing that inner child of all different ages and all different experiences, and befriending the inner critic as well.
And it's so powerful because the body never forgets. And in fact, what I notice is it's in the body that the instinct will first appear. And if we ignore that, it will come back stronger. So, we know it's all got to happen on an integrated level. And part of that, I think, is integrating the memories and embracing the memories so we can overcome and have that full assimilation and integration. Because the most beautiful pieces of art are the ones that don't look perfect, but that have the ripple effect through them, or the little lines through them. And that's who we are, I think, as survivors. So, Brinn, you're also a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to us about what you've done, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So, writing, I didn't know this at the time, but writing was my biggest coping skill when I was a kid. I journaled constantly. I wrote, I doodled. It was my way of getting things out.
Yeah.
I never wrote about the abuse though. I actually have a journal that has some pages ripped out of it, and I think I might have written it in there and then torn it out. But anyway, so that's just a plug for writing and journaling is please, please, please get your thoughts out onto paper. It doesn't have to be about the abuse. Get your thoughts out onto paper. So I did that for a really long time. And then about 4 years ago, I started writing my memoir. And so I am in the process of doing that. It should be published but definitely by the end of the year, and a
Yay.
couple months now. Yes, I'm very excited about that. And I also have a blog and I have an email list. So I send out mental health tips, suggestions. I write a lot about these different parts of ourselves, the critic and the inner child and the adult. So I send out emails every couple weeks, sharing a little story and how these parts of self are showing up in my life. And I give, sometimes I record a meditation to follow along with, or I give a journaling prompt. So I call it mental health mail. So
I
it
love it.
has,
I love it.
yeah. So yeah, so that's a big part of what I do. I've been doing that for a few years now, and then I have some, guest blog entries for other people as well. But yeah, writing has always been a huge part of my processing and healing, and I highly recommend it for anybody who's listening.
So, Bryn, I love that, and you don't have to answer this if you don't wish to. But do we have a title for the book as yet, or is that still in development?
It's still in development.
Oh,
Yes, thank you.
notice that, survivors. See, we can have boundaries. That's okay.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, if
Oh,
anybody is interested in maybe reading it, if you get onto my email list, then you'll definitely get updates about the book and any other programs that I offer.
can you? I mean, I will obviously have it all in the show notes, but just in case people are here watching right now, can you tell us where they can go to find all of that fantastic resource?
Yes, it is my website. It is just my first and last name, brinnlangdale.com.
Love it. So, Bryn, I'm thinking about all the wisdom and the gift that you're able to bring to the world, and how you've managed to overcome or integrate what's happened to you to then have a purpose of supporting others through their healing. And that's really powerful. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria, and thank you for all the work that you've done on yourself, and so that for therefore you can turn around and give it to the world, and creating spaces like this and through your writing and all of that. It's a huge mark on the world.
Thank you. As we've probably got about another 5 minutes. I know, it goes so fast. Um, what's some advice you would share with survivors who maybe are fairly new at thinking it's okay to share their story or tell their story or face into the reality? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I actually, if you do go to my website, I actually have a free guide, the first 5 steps to kick off your healing journey. And there it really focuses on that acceptance piece, is like, kind of one of those first steps of like acknowledging it's not your fault. And that can be really hard, but one tool I say is, think about this from that inner child perspective, from your 5-year-old self. Or if you have children, how would you see it through the eyes of them, or your best friend, or something like that. So writing it down can be really helpful, because then it can seeing it in black and white, can help a little bit more when we're, there's this sense of, we're trying to protect people. Like, I didn't realize, but I was trying to protect my brother for so long from who knows what. But there was a lot of me protecting him by not, owning my own story. And so that's part of that. And getting yourself some sort of support system, whether that's an online community or a therapist. I highly recommend talking to a professional therapist. It can, even if it's for a short time or for the rest of your life. Highly recommend that. Finding a safe person that you can talk to, and that's so valuable. And I've been really blessed in that way to have some amazing people in my life, be right there with me alongside some of these journeys that I've gone on. And finding what helps you recharge and what helps you feel safe. And that might change, that might change throughout the years. For me, I know when I'm feeling it, even if I don't want to, I know writing is a great thing for me to do, or going for a walk and getting outside. Exactly what I need to be doing. Do I want to do it? Probably not. But is it the best thing for me? Do I know that logically? Yes, I do. And so,
Yeah. It's just
yeah, so that
hard, isn't
helps.
it? When you want to, you think walk out in the cold and the wind, or go back to bed with a coffee and watch some Netflix.
Yes. Yeah, so part of it, what I like to do is, like I said earlier, is think about, what does my inner child need? How can I best take care of her like I would be taking care of my daughter? And so I think, and so I even have a little, like, I can show you right here. I have my little 4-year-old self on my phone.
What a gift.
Yeah. Because it's a reminder to me that she's there. That's what parents do with their kids, right? They put their phone, they put their pictures up, and or putting, if you have an altar space, or a place where or your desk, if you can put a picture of your inner child somewhere and really take a moment to connect with them, it can start having that the compassion and the acceptance and the understanding can really start to come when you look at them as just this little innocent kid. who just wants to be loved and not be alone.
Well, look, I so appreciate what you've shared with us, and I'm just thinking about that beautiful child, and just that makes me feel a bit emotional, but how beautiful. So, Bryn, stay right there. Um, Audience, just the power of the healing and the stories that come on the show are just such a gift, aren't they? And Bryn said many things of value, but there's a couple I want to bring to you. I love her the holistic approach with a W at the beginning, because that connection, spirit, the mental, the physical, the gut health is so important and so powerful. So please do take that on board and go and have a look at her website, brinnlangdale.com. I think it's a powerful thing for you to do. And the most beautiful one for me was, what does my inner child need? And I think in all of us, we have these amazing inner children. So stay right there, Bryn. To the rest of you, I see you, I stand beside you, and I believe you.